Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the AI Files. I am Jamie Basilico. My cohort, Shadab, he is actually out taking some well-needed and uh, well-deserved rest. So with that, I'll be going through today's topics for everybody. We do have another jam-packed session, just like we do every week. Again, there's no rest for the AI world, and it's certainly true this week. So we'll be covering several different things. One, NVIDIA had their big conference this past week, and we'll take some of the notables from Jensen Huang around his, at least one of his quotes, but then we'll get into some of the things he said around digital employees at NVIDIA, as well as his take on the way that the industry is actually shaping or shifting. We'll talk about robotaxis and their impact on how we look at self-driving cars and basically a partnership there between two organizations. We'll also look at NVIDIA's chip strategy in China, and we'll last but not least get into some new creative capabilities and a developer announcement from not only Microsoft but Midjourney as well. So all that and more on this week's episode of the AI Files. Stay tuned.
Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the Director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft. All right, so as I mentioned, NVIDIA had their GTC conference this past week. Again, that's their big company conference that they do every year. A lot of announcements in there, but one of the things I took out of that is Jensen's quote. And again, this is what he said, or at least a snippet of it. Physical AI has arrived. Every industrial company will become a robotics company. That's a pretty big, bold statement. And the focus that he's really saying is that machines are important, obviously, in the industrial space and in the real world. It's going to be aligned with how robots are going to become more aware and rather than just doing. So NVIDIA actually announced and have been working on some basically a full stack for robotics, everything from the real world models to simulation tools to robot foundational models itself. And partnerships with obviously major industrial and logistics companies, including healthcare and human robotic robots. Players like Medtronic, Microsoft is obviously in there as well, ABB, and there's a list of others. So what Jensen is really signaling here is that the AI story is expanding beyond chatbots and copilots into factories, into warehouses, into transportation and infrastructure, as well as, obviously in healthcare and surgery. His viewpoint, and especially when he extracted out from his quote, is that companies that once thought of themselves just as manufacturers or logistics companies are increasing in their need to think about how AI and robotics gets interwoven into the things that they do. So it could just not be I don't want to call it a side thought, but it becomes a core in how the physical work gets done at these organizations. So the thought about this here is that it's not about what AI can say, it's about what AI can do. And this means new opportunities in terms of digital automation, digital twins, edge AI, and obviously in the robotics platform. So it's more than just like a forward-looking or aspirational. It's really because NVIDIA obviously is at the core of this, and they are looking at standardizing the way that core technology in these robotics can drive the adoption, product delivery, and obviously at the end of this, it's about chip sales. So the vision that Jensen really is putting out there is that it's not just the next big wave is around AI assistance, but the AI industry, if you will be powered by robots in these factories, in these warehouses, transportation systems, and that's doing real world operations work. So interesting. Again, it's a viewpoint, obviously, that's somewhat on the marketing edge, but it's really a viewpoint in where NVIDIA, or at least Jensen's trying to take NVIDIA as a company, and obviously he sees it as a new market. So all that being said, there's a lot that we can talk about in terms of the use of robotics. Obviously, this is a pictorial on some of the things, and I've seen some of the robotics videos coming out in the last couple of weeks, and it's sort of an eye-catching moment to see what the robots can do, and I think that's part of where Jensen is kind of touting capabilities. So not to end there on NVIDIA, we'll get into some news. One of the things that NVIDIA also said at the conference is their plan for 100 AI agents per employee. This one's interesting because he outlined, a workforce strategy to transform the things that they do inside NVIDIA. Now, this didn't mean that they're going to cut workforce, at least not something that he announced at the GTC, but he claims that they're going to be adding close to 7.5 million AI agents. That roughly turns out to be 100 agents per human. And what this really aligns with is his vision, at least NVIDIA's broader growth strategy, and how the NVIDIA company plans to reach 100 trillion in orders just by 2027. And this is around continuous innovation, things that drive accelerated computing and expands the reach of what NVIDIA can do. So the company has already grown from close to 30,000 employees in 2024 to now 42,000 in the current state of where we are in 2026. And they obviously have a strong push to adopt AI. So Huang also predicts a fundamental shift in the way that they look at organizational design. And to me, this is the important part of this. It's that the AI agents will eventually be hired and onboarded and integrated into the company culture, just like human employees are. So there's other enterprises that are doing this today. Accenture, for example, it's tracking employee AI usage and tying it to promotions, while obviously they're laying off other workers whose roles can't be reskilled into AI-centric work. So to me, this is that shift in the way that a company thinks about its employees and these agents that are doing quote unquote skilled work. But it's about the pairing between the two. So, take a step back and why does this matter? Agents obviously are becoming, a strategic part of the workforce. And I would say it's a workforce multiplier. So this signals the things that, at least NVIDIA is thinking about, where that digital labor scales obviously faster and cheaper than human labor does. But it's about how does a company adopt that agent-based workforce and workflows that can tie together to their human side. Obviously, this prediction also by Huang is really about how AI agents become employees and how that gets integrated into a new HR paradigm. So leaders are certainly going to need to tackle and rethink the way that, what's a job architecture, performance management, and workforce planning as they quote unquote try to integrate that. The other thing that I see is really that AI adoption by current and future employees becomes a promotion criteria. So how well are you leveraging those 100 agents? And again, this is what Jensen is saying for NVIDIA, that every employee is going to be connected to or have 100 agents. So how well are you adopting and using those agents? How well are they connected in the things that you do? That then becomes a measurement for, promotions, for year-end rewards discussions with, said manager. So that's certainly important for the human person. From a technical standpoint, why does this matter? It's the notion that these agents are moving obviously from concept to infrastructure. So this is not a notion of where NVIDIA is talking about just a handful of different co-pilots or AI assistants. It's about planning millions of potential agents that get embedded across the workforce. This implies that, at least from a technical standpoint, how do you scale and orchestrate the various different frameworks? How do you build robust agent-to-agent orchestration or communication? How do you fine-tune those agents in terms of the things that they're doing, or thinking about that human agent loop? And obviously, it goes without saying, if you're going to have 100 agents per employee, which will ultimately scale to millions of agents, what enterprise grade monitoring and governance tools do you have to actually monitor that? Think about what we have today. Yeah, again, NVIDIA and those 42,000 employees, you obviously have HR operating procedures wrapped around that and people that manage that. You're going to need the same exact, I wouldn't say exact, you're going to need the same thought process and the things that you do to manage people to manage those agents. So those are things you want to think about from a technical perspective as you walk away and think about what this means basically for an organization. So that is some of the things that Jensen was mentioning or talking about, and I'll leave you with this one little comment, and you see it on the slide. It's about that. At least what Jensen was saying is that AI will create jobs, not cut them. And I go back to the statement that he's thinking about pairing these agents with their existing workforce, as well as then adding new people to that workforce. And again, these are some of the things that he touted at the latest NVIDIA GTC conference. So next up, we want to talk a little bit about the bet that Uber is making on Rivian. So this is basically Uber is making an investment up to 1.25 billion to be exact in Rivian. So this is part of a long-term partnership to deploy 50,000 autonomous robotaxis from Rivian. The first wave will be the Rivian R2. I think the stated around 10,000 vehicles, and this is slated to hit San Francisco and Miami in 2028. So not too far away, maybe about a year and a half, with the expansion to more than 25 different cities just a couple of years after that, actually by 2031. So this deal hinges on Rivian actually meeting autonomy milestones. So they are making custom AI chips designed for level 4 self-driving. So Rivian hasn't yet demonstrated most of this autonomy stack publicly, but Uber is signaling confidence in what they've seen and locking in an exclusive access to Rivian's robo-taxis on its platform. So obviously there's a lot that we don't know from the public, but communication between those two companies certainly are signaling that Rivian has made strides in that capability for autonomy and self-driving. So this comes on the heels of Uber's similar announcement with Lucid last year as well. It certainly reinforces Uber's strategy for becoming the aggregator of global robotaxis rather than just building its own self-driving tech. So, again, I go back to why does this matter? So it's certainly a major shift in mobility. So Uber is doubling down on a future where it sees autonomous fleets replacing human drivers. So this dramatically reshapes the cost structure, margins, and scalability of what Uber is as a company. It's also a platform power play by Uber securing exclusive robotaxi access from multiple OEMs. Uber is certainly positioning itself as the dominant distribution layer for autonomous mobility. It's similar to how you think about like app stores being the aggregate for developers. Uber's doing the same thing. The other thing, as I mentioned, a 1.25 billion commitment, obviously not small chump change. It's signaling confidence in Rivian's technology trajectory. Obviously, it's contingent on some milestones. Rivian has certainly been seen as a credible long-term autonomy player, not just an EV manufacturer. So, it's signaling confidence there. From a technical perspective, I look at this as, what's the underlying technology? It's the AI chips that Rivian is building. So it's building its own silicon for this level 4 autonomy, which joins in what Tesla and Waymo can do. So this signals certainly a couple different things. One, tighter hardware software integration, lower latency in perception and planning for what these quote unquote chips and the ability for the autonomy can do. But it also signals more control over the model optimization and power efficiency that Rivian is certainly making strides on, and obviously Uber sees that as well. Um, so there are, the level 4 vehicles for that autonomy. If they're going to get to those 10,000 by 2028, that's real breakthroughs in what Rivian's able to do as far as real-time perception, multi-sensor fusion, fleet level orchestration, as well as simulation and validation pipelines within that. So again, I walk away with this is that there's definitely technology advancements. There's positioning that Uber is doing, and obviously there's capability and delivery for what Rivian is going to be able to do. All right, on to our next topic. These are going to be some of the rapid topics. I could have put this one in the more of the launch one as well, but this is where OpenAI released 5.4 mini and 5.4 nano. So these are two new small high efficiency models developed and designed really for speed, scale, and cost sensitive workloads. So GPT mini, and you can see some of the metrics. There's a lot of metrics out there from OpenAI site, but it delivers major gains over what GPT-5 mini did in not only coding, but the reasoning and multimodal understanding, as well as tool use. And it does that by being twice as fast and also approaching the performance level of what I wouldn't call it exactly at the same level, but it's pretty darn close. But the performance level of the flagship GPT 5.4. And it does that on several benchmarks, and you can see some of them here, like the SWE Bench Pro, GPT-4 57.7, GPT-4 Mini 54.4. And again, that's pretty close in terms of comparisons. Nano, again, smallest and the cheapest out of all these in terms of the options. It's aimed at lightweight tasks such as like classification, extraction, ranking, and maybe for coding subagents. So together, these models really signal a shift in composable AI systems. And what I really mean by that is that, the large models handle the planning and judgment, but where we have these fast and more affordable models can execute the tasks at scale with low latency and, like I said, a lower cost. So it's a matter of mixing the best options. Again, that planning, that's where the GPT 5.4 thinking and maybe the pro model, but then you have these very capable, especially the mini model, very capable, lower cost, lower latency. Certainly something to look at. And as I just got released a few days ago, definitely check them out. One other thing about, and again, still under some rapid news, I mentioned a few things around NVIDIA, and again, this goes back to what they announced at GTC, but the NVIDIA is restarting their China compliant chip production. What does that mean for NVIDIA? It means a resurgence of a income stream that they had to halt. So they're restarting the manufacturing of its H200 AI chip variant specifically for China. So this is a model that was redesigned to meet US export regulations. So as I mentioned, the production had been halted last year due to these regulatory hurdles. But as I mentioned, CEO Jensen just mentioned that the company has now secured the necessary US licenses and is already taking orders for this, China variant of the H200. So, as I mentioned before, this is not the H200, at least, is not part of NVIDIA's massive $1 trillion revenue forecast tied to its flagship chips. And again, that's the Blackwell, which is currently the shipping product. And then there's also the next gen Rubin class chips. Those are obviously aimed at, powering the largest AI models. But still, this signals a move by NVIDIA to maintain its foothold in China, despite those tightening controls by the US. So obviously, it will pump up revenue. Next thing I want to get to is Midjourney. There's so many different tools out there for developing, multimedia output, whether or not that's video or imaging. So this latest one by Midjourney, it's again called V8 Alpha. So they just opened up public testing for the V8 Alpha model. And what this really brings is several different capabilities. One is an upgrade in speed. This is touted to be up to 5 times faster and also handles more detailed instructions. And that's meant to be, again, obviously more reliable and introduces stronger personalization, style references, as well as a mood board support. Text rendering is also improved, and a new HD mode or high definition supports native 2K image output. The web interface also got a refresh. It's got a conversation mode, a grid mode, and reorganized some of the sidebars for smoother prompting. The V8 also supports different aspect ratios in advanced mode like raw, chaos, weird, plus backward compatibility into the V7 personalizations. So Midjourney, again, this is touted as an alpha, so it's certainly a early release, and it's still asking users to rate the images, basically getting feedback to help shape the final model. So while still on that imaging concept, Microsoft has come out with a new leap in creative AI. So Microsoft introduced the, and I'm still not sure how to pronounce, is it Maya, is it Mia, but the Microsoft AI or MAI, Maya, Image 2. This is the latest generation of its text-to-image model family, now ranked number 3 globally on the arena.ai leaderboard. So this model is explicitly for creative professionals and was built with a direct input from photographers, designers, and visual storytellers. So this brings high fidelity photorealism. It delivers natural lighting, accurate skin tones, all the things that you would expect from a high-end image to or text to image creation model. And it feels quote unquote real and believable. It also supports typographic layouts and poster style compositions. So that gives creators more control over the fonts, the colors, and the visual story structure, if you will, from those prompts. So behind the scenes, Microsoft is actually rapidly advancing the compute roadmap, including next generation clusters and the ambition to really scale these models to billions of users through deep product integration. So it's not just going to be a single model, but how this integrates. Again, let's take that step back. Why does this matter from a business standpoint? It's about productivity gains. So this will reduce the time to create and spend on what you do in post-production today in the manual editing. So if I can do that through this AI model, that's going to turn into faster campaign cycles, lower production costs, and the ability to experiment without budget penalties or hits on the budget. It's also a competitive differentiation through visual quality. So that photorealistic brand consistency, that is it's certainly a major differentiator for companies. So the high quality generation that these models, or at least this model, can generate will accelerate the things that companies will want to do in marketing, product design, or that customer engagement. This certainly also signals Microsoft's AI acceleration. These new, it's called the GP2000 compute clusters, and the partnership that this has with other companies to reach billions of users show that Microsoft is really doubling down on its AI infrastructure. Tech leaders, why this is going to be important. Obviously, it's if you're modeling quality and real world fidelity, this is what this Maya Image 2 will do. And as I mentioned before, it's made advancements in skin tone accuracy, the environmental realism around it. So these are certainly advancements in what Microsoft has done as it created these models in terms of like the data curation, training pipelines, as well as in the rendering consistency. These are areas, obviously, that developers or people usually struggle with in these generative models. So Microsoft is obviously spending a lot of time and money in the research to develop these new models. Again, take a test drive of the Maya Image 2000. Sorry, of the Image 2. Again, it's you can try it out in the playground that's out there. I'll have show notes that link out to the different websites. Last but not least today, and again, this is a product launch. I thought this would be certainly interesting to our developers out there. So Microsoft, this one is about, I'm recording this on the 21st of March. This was released about 10 days ago. This is an Azure Skills plugin. It's really a new way of turning AI coding agents, like whether or not you use GitHub Copilot, CLI, Claude Code, into practical Azure operators, not just code assistants. So the core idea behind this is simple, but it's powerful in that AI agents are great at doing what? Writing code. But deploying real applications on Azure requires context, it requires judgment, it requires execution. So how do you pick the right services? How do you validate those configurations? How do you enforce the guardrails, all while actually running deployments? That's where these Azure Skills plugin comes into play. So the plugin actually bundles 3 different layers of capability into a single install, which, by the way, you can see the link out here on GitHub. Go hit the GitHub repro. But what it does, 3 single things. 1, Azure Skills. These are curated, reusable workflows that encode Azure expertise, such as decision logic and best practices. It also integrates into the Azure MCP server, and that's a tool layer that lets agents take real actions across various different Azure services. The other thing that it does too is connects into the Azure MCP server. This is the integration with the Azure Foundry for model deployment and agent or AI agent workflows inside of the Microsoft AI ecosystem. So instead of guessing what this agent follows, basically is expert defined workflows that will do things like preparing your app for Azure, validating its configurations before it deploys, orchestrating the deployments, troubleshooting various issues during deployment, as well as identifying cost optimization opportunities for your app. So it's not just a prompt pack, if you will. This is really something way beyond that. It's not just documentation shortcuts either. These skills are version controlled, audible, and reusable across various different teams that package their Azure knowledge once and do it consistently across all these different tools. So it's a valuable tool while you deployment. I would say a big takeaway here is that this Azure Skills plugin grounds the way that AI agents in the real workflows and real tools, and that reduces what I would say is the path to production, if I could say productionization. So that's super important. So key takeaways on this from an executive perspective is that it reduces the friction between strategy and execution. It enables scale at institutional knowledge that is known and validated, and it lowers the operational risk. If you're able to use these skills and it determines things right away, that will create something that's more consistent, predictable, and just overall control of the cloud deployments and the costs that are associated with it. From a technical perspective, you can see this, on the screen here. You build something, you deploy it with whatever agent or however you're building it, you use the skills plugin, and it decides, how to prepare and validate and deploy that. And it leverages all of these other MCP servers automatically to think about what is the right way and the best way of doing it. So this really just ups the game, if you will, on how to build but then more importantly, how do I deploy that and actually use it? So with that, right at just about a half hour. So thanks again for listening to this episode of the AI Files. And till next week. Thanks again, everybody.